Donald Trump wins the election again, he wants to eliminate public education. Now, you've been working in a public education system. What do you think would happen with the system of education if they eliminated the Board of Education?
Well, that's a great question, Bob and David. Now, the U.S. Department of Education has only been around since the 80s. It's
What?
not in, yes, it's very young. It's about 40 years old.
Well, what was it
There's
before
never
that?
been, there wasn't one. Education was the prerogative of the state.
Oh,
So
I was
each
going to say
state,
somebody was, because we had a Board of Education here in Philadelphia.
yeah, but there was no federal.
Okay.
The federal didn't come about until the 80s. And the reason for
Wow.
that is because the United States Constitution does not guarantee anyone a right to a free education.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the preamble of the Constitution, if you look at the language in the Constitution, the word education, I don't believe is even mentioned in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument from conservatives, because, the basis of the conservative platform is, anything that's not necessary, the government should not be involved in. And it was that logic that they used to justify the federal government not doing anything about Jim Crow, Willie Lynch, segregation, Ku Klux Klan terrorism. They say, hey, if it's not in the Constitution, the federal government shouldn't be involved. But the problem with that is the 14th Amendment guarantees everybody equal protection under the law. So what that says is even if the state is overseeing this, if they're not being fair in the manner in which they are providing this service to all of their citizens equally, then the feds have to come in because there's a 14th Amendment violation here. Because basically the 14th Amendment that followed the Emancipation Amendment was necessary, Bob and David, because the feds had to go into the southern states and make sure Black people were being allowed to vote and being allowed to work and other things like that. So the feds had to get involved because the former Confederate states had no interest in guaranteeing Black people their equal participation in society. So long story short, most white people in this country either do not have school-age children or they don't send them to public school. So the argument is, why am I paying school taxes when the Constitution doesn't even guarantee education?
Wow, that's amazing. But there probably is no word in the Constitution that says abortion either.
And there's no word, and in fact, the Constitution doesn't even mention the word slaves, if I'm not mistaken. It's property. We're included in the Constitution as property. So that's why when people say, hey, they need to change the Constitution, you know what I mean? Because we were enslaved, and the Constitution is definitely a pro-slavery document. But then their argument is going to be, well, we don't even mention the word slave. We never call y'all slaves. You know what I mean? We called you, we just used the word property. And at the time, you guys were considered property. So they were very deceptive, very dishonest, very misleading, extremely calculating and Machiavellian with the manner in which they wrote the Constitution.
Wow, so they tried to hide it, to try to be deceptive. So now, so if so, the states would still be required then to provide public education.
Absolutely. Public education is the prerogative of the state.
So it's the
And so
prerogative,
if
not a requirement.
right. Well, you do have compulsory ed. So yes, nearly every state has compulsory education from the first grade onward. Some states have compulsory kindergarten. Pennsylvania doesn't have compulsory kindergarten. You don't have to send your kids to kindergarten, although we should if we're not going to be educating them at home. With that being said, what will happen, Bob and David, if the Department of Education is abolished at the federal level? The challenge for Black people will be that when our children's rights are violated by the state, by the local school board, by the local school district, it's going to be much more difficult to appeal that discrimination to the federal level. You may be limited to the state.
It still amazes me how some people have to go out of their hometown in order to get recognition and respect. I wonder why is that? People, I guess, that seeing you grow up, they lack the acknowledgement of anyone's success, whether you're an artist, singer, basketball player. People say you have to leave town in order to get recognized. Why do you think that is as a psychologist?
Well, you know, they say familiarity breeds contempt.
Mm-hmm.
They say that no celebrity is a star to their chauffeur
Wow.
because they see them every day,
Yeah.
see their imperfections and perfections, and they get so used to them that it's hard for them to celebrate them.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ in the Bible, he said a prophet is not without honor
Mm,
except in his own hometown.
mm, 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 mm.
Most prophets of the Bible had to leave their place of birth in order to get that recognition and to be properly respected as a prophet. They may have returned home later, but they initially had to leave. Look at all of our great leaders. Marcus Garvey had to leave Jamaica.
Mm.
The Honorable Marcus Garvey, who, by the way, spent his last visits in North America in Toronto and in Montreal.
Wow.
This is one of the last places that the most honorable Marcus Garvey, visited in North America. His course of African fundamentalism was actually held in Canada. One of the oldest continuously owned pieces of property in the UNIA is currently in Montreal, Canada today. And so when you look at Garvey, when you look at Malcolm, when you look at Mr. Muhammad, when you look at most of the leaders, almost everybody, look at Dr. King. He
Mm-hmm.
was from Georgia, but he made his name in Alabama and then came back home later to co-pastor with his father. So I'm not sure what it is, but we often have to leave home to get our flowers.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, listen, I got flowers for you, and you my whole boy, my whole young boy, and I appreciate you and all that you do for raising the consciousness of all of us out here in the diaspora, because you're not just local raising consciousness, you're globally raising consciousness, and that's why you can go to Canada, you can go to Africa, you can go anywhere in the world, and people know you and respect you, and as I do as well. You see, I got my shirt on today because that's how
Yes,
much I
sir.
respect you. That's right. Speaking about the shirt, before we get into it, tell us about the school. What's going on?
Yes, indeed. We doing well right now with FDMG. The only things that are remaining that are required, we have to finish painting. So we got to finish beautifying the building. Just a few more coats because I really want that paint to pop. I really
Mm-hmm.
want it to pop. So we're going to put a few more coats on there so it really pops. And we have to cover up some floors. Some of the classrooms had carpet. We took out the old dirty carpet about 3 years ago, so it's concrete. We need to cover up that concrete. Five of the rooms we're going to put carpet in, some new carpet, and then in the other rooms we're going to lay down a tile. And so once we do that, we have a couple doors that have to be replaced, inside doors. A girls' bathroom door, boys' bathroom door has to be replaced. So we got a couple doors, so that's no big deal. And we got to cover up them floors, which is really no big deal either. So we're really dealing with what you want to say, cosmetology and beautification.
Cosmetics, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So we really on cosmetics. So we on a runway. And I'm just hoping, Baba David, that when we apply for the certificate of occupancy, and I want to stay positive and I'm going to stay positive, but I'm just hoping that when we apply for the certificate of occupancy, we don't get a whole bunch of pushback and a whole bunch of red tape and a whole bunch of bureaucratic sabotage from the inspector from the L&I, because
Yeah.
we don't, I don't want to get too much into it, but I have reasons to believe that it might not go smoothly. I don't think they ever thought we would finish. I
Mm-hmm.
think they were counting us out. And now that we are just about done, it's going to get really interesting. And I just hope this thing doesn't, require us to have a protest. I hope it doesn't require us to go to court. I'm just hoping that it's just a nice and smooth process because we've
Yes.
been so much to get here. And I'm just hoping they pass us with flying colors.
Well, I always assumed that they was going to try to throw a wrench in the works, because they don't want to see someone like yourself, not just someone like yourself, but someone from our community to be as successful at something like that.